الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد النبي الأمين وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعد تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فيما معنا ولا غائبا عنا شقيا ولا محروما. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. I wanted to give an introduction. I wanted to say something before I hand it over to Ayman to speak about the Al-Yawm Al-Akhir and the hereafter and the signs of the hereafter. And I want to say that Al-Iman bil-Yawm Al-Akhir, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have said in Surah Al-Baqarah, آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله. The Prophet ﷺ was asked by Jibreel. He said, Ya Muhammad, أخبرني عن الإيمان. Tell me about the Iman. He said, أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر والقضاء خيره وشره من الله تعالى. So these are the six elements, these are the six pillars of Iman. So if you notice that most of these are actually from the unseen. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about آمن الرسول بالله, it's from the unseen. No one have seen Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even Musa alayhi salam, he tried, he said, قال ربي أرني أنظر إليك. Oh Allah, let me see you. I've been talking to you, I want to see you. He said, not in this life. No one. Even the Prophet ﷺ was asked, he said, هل رأيت الله في الإسراء والمعراج? He said, did you see Allah? He said, نور أن أراه. All what I have seen was light. I could not see it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that from the unseen matters that were revealed in the hereafter. And then he said, Billahi wa malaikatihi, the angels are unseen. Nobody knows about the angels. That's why people believe, people don't believe, but so this is one of the unseen. And then he said, wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi, the books. We did not see the books before, but we believe in them. We did not see the prophets before, but we believed in them. And we believe in the Prophet ﷺ, although we did not even, see him. So the question is, what is your final destination? The question is, what is the end of this matter? What is the end of any human being? People say the end of any human being is what? Death. They say is what? Death. Most of the people, they tell you death. But what we believe is the death is the first, as it was mentioned in the hadith, أول منزلة من يوم القيامة. The death is the first level, is the first destination, is the first place in the hereafter. So what is after death? It is the signs, it is the al-barzakh, or and then the day of the judgment, and then after that it will be what? It will be Jannah, it will be Nar, that will be the eternity forever till Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, forever as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us. And He told us about that in the Quran and the Sunnah. And this is the talk tonight and next week and week after that is about the hereafter and about the signs. It is not this story for us to learn and to entertain or to be afraid and to be scared and to scare the children with and what have you. It is actually something that we need to learn because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask us about this in Yawm al-Qiyamah. That's why it was mentioned in the hadith. Some people, when the angels come and they wake them up in the grave and they ask them the question, what do they say? They say ha 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 ha. They say ha ha. As was mentioned in the hadith, means that they are scared. They were not supposed to be awake. And they say in the Quran, he said, مَنْ بَعَثَنَا مِنْ مَرْقَدِنَا. Who made us awake now? We thought that this is the end. Now we know it is not the end. We as believers, we as Muslims, we believe that it is, it is not the end. Yes, it is something that unknown, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have told us for what? To tell us, to teach us, and to warn us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَأَنذِرْهُمْ يَوْمَ الْحَسْرَةِ. Warn them for the day that they will regret إِذَا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ, when everything is done, وَهُمْ فِي غَفْلَةٍ, and they were heedless, وَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, and they were not believing. People were taught, they heard Muslims saying about these things in the news, in the newspaper, in the books, that yes, there is a hereafter, yes, there are angels. People now making fun of the 72 Huriyya and Jannah. They're making fun of a Jannah, they make fun of all of these things. Now because they know about it, what's going to happen to these people? They will regret that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّكَ مُنذِرُ مَن يَخْشَاهَا, you are the warner of those who fear that day. And brothers and sisters, don't get that in a negative way. If you are walking and I tell you watch it, because you might fall into a hole, does that mean something bad? It's something good. That's why the word munzir, it is not something bad, it is something good. That the Prophet ﷺ is warning us about these things before it happens. So that's why Allah subhanahu يا أيها النبي إنا أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا إن أنت إلا نذير. In fact, in Surah Al-Qamar, 11 times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the word nadhr, or nadhara, or andhara, to warn somebody, to warn somebody. In fact, it was mentioned in the Quran 89 times. The person, the winner, the true winner, is the one who will actually think about the end. Everybody in this life think about the end. You know what they call it in the corporate America? They call it, result-oriented. We are all result-oriented. They tell you, I worked in this project for a long time. They tell you, and then what happened? You say, well, it didn't work. Then all of that is a waste for me, for the company. You have to give me a result. In fact, if I want to invest something, I want to invest in something is good, that I will get something in the end, right? I don't want to invest in something that I will lose money. So this is exactly, subhanAllah, that if you look at the hereafter, it is the same thing. This dunya, as it was mentioned by the companion, قالوا هي مزرعة الآخرة. The dunya is actually the field that you harvest and you plant for the hereafter, and for something bigger than that. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يقول وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. The akhirah is the best, and that what will last. This life is not gonna last. So it is the matter of the results. And of course there is no comparison about this life and the hereafter. You do something small, tiny. He said, if you build a house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will build you a house in Jannah. There is no comparison. There is so many examples. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, if you do small, tiny things, I will give you so much in the akhirah. So there is no comparison. Sometimes people don't want to talk about the akhirah because they get scared. They say, what are you talking about? You're talking about the grave, the punishment in the grave. You're talking about the akhirah. You're talking about the sun is falling, the moon is crashing, and the stars are burning. We don't want to talk about that. And definitely, this is part of al-yawm al-akhir. Ibn Abbas يقول يوم الآخر يوم يغضب الله فيه. He said it's a day that Allah will put His wrath upon everything. He said إلا المتقين, except those who are righteous. So the real person, the true person, the person who really has a mind, will think about what? Will think about the hereafter, will prepare. If you want to go to a journey, you definitely prepare for it. You don't just say, well, tomorrow I'm going overseas. You cannot do that. Your wife will tell you, go by yourself. I'm staying here. Because we're not prepared for it. So definitely you have to prepare for it. We don't want to scare people. In fact, we want to talk about, the believers and the journey of the believer, the journey of the mu'min. We want to be positive. We want to talk about what the mu'min will happen to him in the grave. What will the mu'min happen to him when they resurrect? When the mu'min is standing in the day of judgment. We want to give the good news, but also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about other things. He said, أَدْخِلُوا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ أَشَدَّ الْعَذَابِ. Let Fir'aun and his people enter the worst of the punishment. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to show us both ways. So what we need to do, we need to call people for the good investment. Put a good investment so you will get that. So in these actually series, what we're going to do, we're going to strengthen our iman. We're going to tell the believers that that we all believe in these things, and we need to increase our belief, because the more you believe in the hereafter, the more you will work for it, rather than working for something else. Yes, it is a series to talk about the journey of the believers to the hereafter. It is a series to teach how can we either we're building our life to build also the akhirah, and to build that bridge for the hereafter. We do not only live for the akhirah, because people will die from scaredness, being to fear akhirah. We live in our life, we have family, we have children, we have work, we're doing all of that. And different, because alhamdulillah, we believers, and we Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us, we are the people of the masajid, and we say, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us on this path, Ya Rabbil Alameen. But brothers and sisters, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us the glad tidings, He has given us the warnings also. As we have hope, also we have to have that fear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might punish us, because we have to make sure that we are on the right path. When Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu told us, he said, and although he was given the glad tidings of Jannah, he said, لو كانت إحدى قدماي في الجنة, if one of my feet are in Jannah, والأخرى خارجها, and the other one is outside, لما أمنت مكر الله. I will never, put my guards down. I will never, feel secured till I go to Jannah. So we believe that the Yawm al-Akhir is part of this deen, is part of Islam, is part of Iman. When we make dua and you are in the tawaf, you are in your life, you say رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. You do not just make about dunya, you talk about the akhirah. And not only that, you say, oh Allah, save us from hellfire. Even like when you're reading, you say, Allahumma barik lana fima razaqtana wa qina adhab an-nar. But what this life has to do with our food and the hereafter? Because if you don't thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life, what's going to happen to you in the hereafter? So that's why it is important, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put us on earth, to build earth. Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. In the same time, we have that saying the Prophet ﷺ have told us about, إِذَا قَامَتِ السَّاعَةِ, when the day of judgment is happening. وَفِي يَدِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَسِيلًا, and some of you has a small tiny plant, فَلْيَغْرِسْهَا, go ahead and plant it. It means that you always do good till the last minute of your life. Look, brothers and sisters, Abu Hanifa radiallahu anh, he was dying in the last few minutes of his death, and his student Abu Yusuf was sitting next to him. So he used to go into deep sleep, and he wakes up and he said, Ya Abu Yusuf, what about this issue in fiqh I was thinking about? And Abu Yusuf told him, Ya Imam, this is not the time for this. You're dying now. Let's talk about the hereafter. Let's talk about something. He said, Ya Abu Yusuf, to die knowing that I have benefited the ummah, rather than to die like this without benefiting the ummah, how good I am to be. You see, even our ulama have taught us, even at death, they are doing something good for the community. Brothers and sisters, this deen is not only for the akhirah, it's not only for the dunya. You have to have the balance. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا, do not forget your share of dunya. وَأَحْسِن, but be the best. Skill in your life, skill in your hereafter. كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ وَلَا تَبْغِي الْفَسَادَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, and do not oppress, and do not establish oppression. So it is actually, when we talk about the hereafter, it's a call for us to do something good. And that's why we always make dua, like the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan وارزقنا اتباعه وارنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. Show us the truth and give us the ability to be on it, and tell us about the falsehood, so we will not be on that. I would really love to, inshallah, continue with you, but definitely there is someone who is better than me right now, who is prepared for this, inshallah. And I hope and I pray that all of you will attend and keep attending, as inshallah I will keep attending. I would leave you with my son. As we say, falidatu kabidi is like the best of my liver. That's in the Arabic, with Ayman Taleb, and he will talk to you about the hereafter. Alhamdulillah, I don't want to brag about him, but I have to say that he was raised in the house of knowledge, in the house of Islam, like I was raised in the house of knowledge and house of Islam. He was raised in an Islamic school. It was the first Islamic school in the area. It was Brighter Horizon Academy. And definitely, I think he learned from me a lot, from his mom a lot, from the shuyukh, from people around the community. He was raised in this community. He was actually born in Denton. He was there for 5 years, and then we moved here to Richardson in 1990, where he was in Brighter Horizon at that time, and he has a PhD, he has a BA, a bachelor degree in journalism and minor in political science. He actually he written and directed a play for the youth called Mercy to Mankind. He is following his father and grandfather's footsteps, I hope, inshallah, like everybody else. He is the outreach coordinator for Sham Relief Foundation, helping orphans, widows, men, women, children of Syria, as we have all these crises happening in Syria. And I will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he is married, alhamdulillah, to mashallah, a beautiful, beautiful wife. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give her righteousness, her. And of course he has beautiful two daughters. I call my grandkids before I say they're his daughters. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he and him will be in Jannah, and his wife, as the Prophet ﷺ said, Man kana lahu ibnatani aw ukhtani. If someone has two daughters or two sisters, and he raised them up to be righteous, kuntu ana wa huwa fil jannati kahatayn. I would be in Jannah with him like this. So I would like to ask you, all of you, to welcome Ayman, inshallah, to this series. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum. And I will give the microphone to Ayman, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasul al-Kareem Sayyidina Muhammad Nabi al-Amin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yaqulu fi Surah al-Mu'minun ba'da a'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. قال كم لبثتم في الأرض عدد سنين قالوا لبثنا يوما أو بعض يوم قالوا لبثنا يوما أو بعض يوم فاسأل العادين. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him, we seek help from Him, we seek His guidance and forgiveness, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this gathering and to give us knowledge which is beneficial, and we seek refuge in Him from knowledge that is not beneficial, inshallah. The verses that I recited just now from Surah Al-Mu'minun, the translation reads that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to the believers in Jannah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gather us with Him, inshallah, in Al-Jannah. He will ask us, how long did you remain on earth in number of years? And we are going to be there enjoying an amazing company and great food and wonderful surroundings, and we're going to be just, to say that we are on cloud 9 is an understatement. And we are going to say, Ya Allah, we remained a day or part of a day on earth. Go ask those who keep count. We're going to be in such a perfect utopia and so utterly happy that we don't know how to put it in terms just how insignificant this life was when we, inshallah, make it to Al-Jannah. When we are living in this life, in the simplest of terms, we live this life sometimes forgetting that we are aiming for something bigger. In the simplest of terms, we are constantly in a point in the day that we're getting ready for the next thing that is on the agenda. Right? We wake up so we can get ready for the day. We get ready for the day so we can do what we need to do during the day. So we go to work, we take care of the affairs of the house. Okay? We do what we need to do in the day, and while we're doing that, we're thinking about the break, our lunch break, we want maybe just turn on the TV just for a second. And while we're on our break, we're thinking, I gotta go to the next thing. I have to finish what I started doing in the beginning part of my work day. And while we're finishing our work day, we're thinking to ourselves, we're gonna reach the end of our work day. And then when we finish our work day, we get to our break. While we're in our break, we get to think, we get to do a fun activity that we like to do. Right? Some of us, we can't wait to go home and play with our children. Some of us, we need to get home and maybe prepare dinner. Some of us, this is the chance for us to maybe do some outdoor activity, something. This is, we have a hobby. And while we're doing the hobby, we're thinking about the next thing which we need to do is we need to sleep. And while we're sleeping, we think about we need to wake up. And this is the cycle that we go in every single day. And that's on a daily basis. When you zoom out just a little bit and you look at the way that we live our life, we are born and we develop basic motor skills. Why do we develop those basic motor skills? We develop those basic motor skills so we can go get an education, so we can be taught how to think. We go get taught how to think so we can get a higher education, so we can get that degree. We get that degree so we can make money. We make that money so we can get married. We get married so we can start a family. We start a family, why? Because we never want to be alone. We never want to be alone, why? Because when we die, and this is an common denominator between all life forms in this life, we are going to die. When we die, we don't want to die alone. And that's the point. And for those that don't have faith, this is the limited thinking. This is the scope of how you look at things. This is the limit right here. But we as Muslims, we know that there's something much bigger than that. We know that this life is merely just another stop in the train station, just another train station on the way to something bigger. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He created our souls, every single one of us, you, me, every celebrity you've ever heard of, every king, every custodian, every person that was ever the son and daughter of Adam was with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Al-Jannah. That is our homeland. That is our nationality. That's where we started out. And then our soul got transported to the womb of our mothers. The first slip is torn. All right, we made it past the first station. We're in the womb. We are in there, we're cooking for 9 months. And then the second slip is torn and we are born into this world. And we go through this crazy experience we call life. And we go through the experience that we just explained. And then when we die, again, a certain fact that no matter what religion, what background, what race, what nationality, what level of education, how much money you make, doesn't matter, you are going to die. I am going to die. That slip is going to be torn. They're going to make an announcement tomorrow with my name on it. Brothers and sisters, please stay after Salat al-Jum'ah. Your brother Ayman Taleb has passed away. Please stick around for the janazah so you can pray for his soul, inshallah. That's going to happen to me. And the soul is going to go to the grave, the next ticket. And after the grave, our soul is going to be brought up with our everlasting body in the next life, in an eternal life, in Yawm al-Qiyamah. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Kun fi dunya ka'annaka abir sabil." Be in this life as a traveler. So now that we put things in perspective, this is the focus. We understand the big picture now. Doesn't it make sense that we move and live our life? This is the way we should be thinking about it, right? You know, we mentioned earlier in the introduction that believing in this material that we're going to discuss is part of our iman. Why do we talk about al-akhirah? Well, to answer that question, I will answer that question with another question. Why do we have Muslims, people who call themselves Muslims, who drink? I'm only 29 going on 30. I'm not all that old. But in my limited experience in life, I have yet to meet a single Muslim who does not know that drinking is haram. They all know it's haram, and yet we break a rule, it's okay. Right? That's the thinking. Why do we have Muslims who commit fornication and adultery? I'm going to be real with you in this series, inshallah. I'm going to be very real, because the stuff we're going to be talking about is as real as it gets. Why do we have Muslims who deal with riba, who lie, who gamble, who steal, who cheat? Why? In this series, inshallah, we're going to be talking about, this is the curriculum. We're going to be speaking about the notifications of Judgment Day, or the signs of Judgment Day, of al-akhir, of as-sa'a, the hour. We're going to be talking about death and the death experience. We're going to be speaking about the grave and what we will be experiencing in the grave as a mu'min and as a kafir. See, in this series, we want to be positive. That's the carrot. But we're also going to show what happens to those who don't believe. That's the stick. Just to keep us in shape if we start to slack. And finally, we'll be discussing Judgment Day, the day of resurrection, what's going to happen on that day, and hellfire, what will happen to those who do not who do not have the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and finally, paradise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those of Ahlul Jannah. So why do we have Muslims who break all these rules? There is a wonderful, wonderful analysis, I would say, done by our mother Aisha radiallahu anha. I would say it's the analysis of the human condition. She said, إنما نزل أول ما نزل منه القرآن سورة من المفصلة فيها ذكر الجنة والنار حتى إذا ثاب الناس إلى الإسلام نزل الحلال والحرام. She said, the first part of the Quran to come down was a chapter from Al-Mufassal, in which there was a reminder about paradise and hellfire. So when the people turned to their Lord, the verses pertaining to the lawful and unlawful were revealed. Pause. The first 13 years of the mission of the Prophet ﷺ, what was it about? Was there a lot of halal and haram? It was, don't worship these other gods. There's only one God. That's the message. There's only one God. Do not worship these other gods. And a few others here and there. The first 13 years, the Prophet ﷺ was building and growing these men and women that would later become what we know them as as-sahabatul kiram. These men and women were not, they didn't come out of thin air. They were grown. Leaders are not made, leaders are not born, they're made. And for the first 13 years, the Prophet ﷺ made these men and women to become the people that we remember now. And when he during these first 13 years, what was the Quran about? It was about Tawheed. It was about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was about the nations that came before us, the stories of the prophets. It was about caring for you. There's the most simplest teachings of Islam, caring for your neighbor, caring for your family. This was the essence, right? The equality of each other. This was the first 13 years. And then Aisha radiallahu anha says that when the hearts turned to their Lord. What does that mean, turn to their Lord? That means that when it prioritized Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over whatever it is else they wanted in life, that's when the halal al-haram came. The statement continues. وَلَوْ نَزَّلَ أَوَّلَ شَيْءٍ لَا تَشْرِبُوا الْخَمْرَ لَقَالُوا لَا نَدْعُ الْخَمْرَ أَبَدًا وَلَوْ نَزَّلَ لَا تَزْنُوا لَقَالُوا لَا نَدْعُ الزِّنَا أَبَدًا. And had the first thing that been revealed, do not consume intoxicants, they would have said, we will never forego intoxicants and wine and alcohol. And had it been, don't commit fornication and adultery, they would have said, we will never give up fornication and adultery. Look at, I would say, I can definitely point at myself and my generation and the new generation. Okay? I have personally witnessed the collapse of my generation's faith. Let me give you a quick example that shows you what I'm talking about. When I was growing up, I would attend the conventions and the lectures, and the questions that came up on the mic and during the question and answer was, Sheikh, is music halal or haram? Sheikh, why is it haram to have a girlfriend? Those are the questions my generations were asking. If you go to the conventions now, they're asking, does Allah exist? These are children of Muslims. Their own Islam is in question. Maybe, just maybe, if the beginning of our generation, my generation, if we were taught Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the stories, the basic simple things, instead of it being halal, 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 haram, 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 haram. If that was the approach instead, wouldn't that make sense that when we got a little older, that Allah said, no girlfriend, no boyfriend, hey, no problem. Allah said, no drinking, no drugs, done deal. We don't have to worry about it. It's under discussion. Doesn't that make sense? This was the tarbiyah, the upbringing of the Sahaba the first 13 years. Every single prophet talked about this event called as-sa'ah, the hour. And some prophets only preached for one day before getting killed. That was the first thing that the Prophet ﷺ talked about when he stood up on Mount Safa and he made the message of Islam public for the first time. He said, I am here to warn you of a day when you will be held accountable for your actions. If you find yourself, or if you have a good friend that confides in you and they tell you, man, you see the signs that their iman is weak, talking about this is the solution. The solution is talking about al-akhirah. Is talking about the unseen, believe it or not. Because when you talk about al-akhirah, you are talking about something that needs to be contemplated on a very, very deep level. And it's a very, very serious subject. The Prophet ﷺ said, لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ مَا أَعْلَمْ لَضَحِكْتُمْ قَلِيلًا وَلَبَكَيْتُمْ كَثِيرًا. That if you knew what I knew, you would laugh a little and you would weep much. Ali radiallahu anhu, he was one of the first people to come into Islam. He said, if I saw Al-Jannah in front of me, it would not make me want to desire it anymore. And if I saw Jahannam in front of me, it would not make me fear it anymore. Why? Because this was something that was always on his mind. And he lived his day-to-day with al-akhirah in mind. What I am doing now, I am harvesting my akhirah. I'm not looking for the end of the day or for the end of the week or for the end of the year. I'm looking for what's waiting for me after I die. That's the goal. Let's do some math. Let's do some math real quick before we get into the heavy stuff. How long are we going to live? 60, 70, 80 years? Right? I looked it up. The average, the life expectancy in America is 78.74 years. How long do we have in the next life? Eternity. Do you understand this number? Mathematical terms? Infinity. What is infinity? That means when you're done counting, infinity keeps going. How long do we have? So let's do some simple math. If we are working so hard in this life so that we could harvest, or we want to see the return of our investment right now, we're working so hard, how much should we invest in this life? And let's say we are going to live the same amount of years in the next life. So if we were to get 78.74 years in the next life, how much focus would you put in this life? How much focus would you put on that life? Half, right? Makes sense. If I were to tell you that you are going to, let's make life a lot easier. Instead of 78, let's call it 100. If you were to know for a hard fact that Al-Akhirah is 1,000 years, and you only live 100 years in this life, how much time would you spend for this life or for the next life? You would spend 10 times the effort for the next life. 10,000 years in the next life. 100,000 years in the next life. 1,000,000. How about 1 billion? And we're still not done. Put it in a calculator. 78.74 divided by infinity, you get what? Math. 0. 78.74 years is insignificant. That it's 0 in math. Remember what we opened up with in Surah Al-Mu'minun? قال كم لبثتم في الأرض عدد سنين قالوا لبثنا يوما أو بعض يوم. We stayed in it a day or a part of a day. فاسأل العادين. Go ask those who are counting. To put this in perspective again, why learn about Al-Akhirah? Right? One of the key reasons I would say is social and individual change. Death has a way of shuffling your priorities to take care of the things you need to take care of. Right? To give you an example, in our country, in our nation, in 1930, a law was passed called the Prohibition Act. Anybody heard of it? The Prohibition Act outlawed the consumption and the sales of alcohol. SubhanAllah, any society knows at its root that alcohol is evil. It produces evil. Even to today, what do they say? Don't drink and drive. Don't drink and drive. But they don't say don't drink. Just say don't drink and drive. 1930, the Prohibition Act was passed, and what was the result? 500,000 people went to jail. Lots of money was put into enforcing the law. People needed alcohol in their system. They felt like they really needed it. So much so that they were bootlegging alcohol in their own homes. And if you study the process of how alcohol is made, it's a very tedious process, because if you don't do it right, it's going to be contaminated and you will get sick. And a lot of people got sick. A lot of people died because of the poison. And the mafia also rose during this time because of this thing called liquid gold. Alcohol was outlawed, and yet everybody still wanted it. So the mafia came in and said, hey, we'll make it for you. And they charged double for half the amount. That is just how crazy things were in America because they could not give up alcohol. It was reversed in 4 years. The people couldn't live without this evil thing in their lives. They just couldn't. Side-by-side comparison. Oh, before I go into the side-by-side comparison, I propose this question. What would happen if the Prohibition Act was proposed today? I ask. We live in the city of Richardson. I grew up in this city. When I was growing up, this was a dry city. And somewhere along the way, it got voted that the city of Richardson become a wet city. And all the convenience stores started having alcohol. Right? You can't not have it here. And what's the biggest push for it? It's really good for our economy. It's good for money. It's good for business. Right? Justify anything with money. The discussion in the 30s was, let's ban alcohol. You know what the discussion now is in 2015? Let's legalize weed. Think about that for a second. Let's turn back the clock to the year 3 after Hijrah, shortly after the Battle of Uhud. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed 2 ayatain, in which He said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu innama al-khamru wal-maysiru wal-ansabu wal-azlamu rijsum min amali ash-shaytan فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون. O you who have believed, indeed, intoxicants, gambling, sacrificing on stone altars to other than Allah, and divining arrows are but defilement from the work of Satan. So avoid it that you may be successful. Satan only wants to cause between you animosity and hatred through intoxicants and gambling, and to avert you from the remembrance of Allah and from prayer. So will you not desist? These 2 ayahs were revealed. And the Sahaba left the masjid and they started reciting these ayat in the city. Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu an, remember, alcohol was not forbidden just yet. Hold on a second. You need to understand something about the Arab at the time. They were heavy drinkers. Heavy. Like today. They were heavy drinkers. Okay? And over time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them a revelation. I don't know the ayah right now, I didn't write it down. But He told them, do not go into salah while you don't know what you are saying. Right? What was the saying about Sayyidina Aisha? She said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept talking about Allah and Jannah and Nar until what? Until the hearts turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Until they prioritized Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over everything else. So when the ayah came down saying, do not go into salah while you don't know what you're saying, the Muslims took it as, man, we need to time when we are going to go get a drink. So that when we go to salah, we know what we're saying. Salah was so important for them that they rescheduled when they were going to go to the bar. And then these ayahs were revealed. Anas ibn Malik said that he was serving alcohol to some companions, to the Sahaba. And then they heard the ayah being recited in the street. Anas ibn Malik took the jug and he dumped it. The other Sahaba with him, they took their cups and they poured it. The Sahaba that had the alcohol in their mouth, they spit it out. And those that already swallowed it went so far as to induce vomit so that the haram is no longer in their system. That is how much they prioritized Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over what they wanted. Why do you think they did that? They loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They loved Him more than they loved anything else. They loved Allah and His Rasul so much that even when they did slip up, they would go and they would rather confess their crime to the Prophet ﷺ to face the punishment in this life instead of facing it in the hereafter. Who would do that? Who would go and confess a crime when it is between you and Allah, just so they can be resolved of it? Why would you do that? Because you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much. You want to be in His Jannah. And the greatest pleasure of His Jannah is being in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeing His face subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why were they ready to do this? Because as-sam'a wa ta'a. They were ready to listen and obey. Inshallah, next week we are going to begin with talking about these events that are going to happen, that the Prophet ﷺ prophesied about. He told us that are going to happen, leading up to this event that is called as-sa'a, the hour. And we are in for quite a journey, brothers and sisters. We are in for quite a journey as for what we are going to see, what we have seen, that the Prophet ﷺ said was going to pass, and those things have come to pass. We are going to see what the Prophet ﷺ told us is going to pass, and we are experiencing it now. And we are going to talk about some things the Prophet ﷺ said were going to pass, and they have yet to come to pass. But with the way things are happening in the world, are we going to live to see those things happen? Allahu A'lam. Allahu A'lam. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that are from ilmul ghaib, from the knowledge of what we don't know about, things that were kept hidden on purpose. But inshallah, we're going to go through what the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us about. And just for those of you, just so you can have some ease in your heart. And some people, they have a lot of questions about what's your sources and stuff. I'm going to tell you right now, I will only use hadith that have been graded sahih. So you know. Okay? Everything else, we will leave that to the scholars, inshallah. The scholars, they know how to better use the hadith that were graded anything less than sahih. So, inshallah, with that we close. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لكم فاستغفروه فيتوب المستغفرين إن شاء الله.